Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Not Funny Guys Presents Go Team Venture. So we are going into our 4th episode, and we are tackling episodes 7 and 8 from season 1 of the Venture Brothers. So if you like this, subscribe, either on the podcast form or over on the YouTube channel. Very, very thank you in advance. So let's start with episode 7, Ice Station Impossible. Now, right out the bat, before I even get into the summary of this episode, this episode is split into two storylines. We follow Dean, Hank, and Brock, and then we also follow Professor Impossible, who is one of our sort of antagonists of the episode, who is operating a what do they call it? They called it, a secret think tank at the North Pole, apparently. And this is where we will also be first introduced, I believe, to the OSI. In passing, it will become more popularly recognizable in the next episode, Midlife Chrysalis. But we are also introduced to Professor Impossible. We are also introduced, I believe, for the first time to Pete White, who we'll meet more of, and Billy Quizboy. I can't remember his last name to save my life. But before I get into that, we've got some characters. So we have two storylines going on. This was originally aired September 18th, 2004, and is written by co-creator Jackson Public. And of course, we start off with an exchange between Race Bannon, which then I believe he goes by a different name in the episode. No, actually, they do call him Race Bannon, who was originally the bodyguard for Johnny Quest. And we have a slightly older version of him sort of kicking the heck out of these snake men before he bails out after throwing a grenade and calling it a blast, and laughing at his own joke, lights up a cigarette, and then is immediately hit by the falling plane that circles back around. Now, I want to stay with this storyline and then come back to the think tank storyline with Rusty a little bit later here with Dr. Venture. So what we find out is the plane crashes in their hangar. Brock is completely unfazed, but Hank has been hit in the head by whatever canister Race was trying to retrieve, and Race Bannon has parachuted in his now seemingly dead, but not quite dead body, has landed, and is proceeded to be played with by a bunch of kids who also discover all his secret spy stuff. They discover his flamethrower lighter, his magnetic watch, his acid shooting pin, all the James Bond gadgety spy stuff the kids basically find and start playing with recklessly. Once they find the Goliath serum, they go looking. Brock is like Agent Down. So they go searching the area and they change into clothes. And Hank has been hit in the head, but he changes into like a black spy outfit. And Dean changes into what appears to be a cowboy outfit. Because once again, he is just a child. They both are. And they acted too. So they go off there in their little pursuit. They find Race Bannon. Race is not dead. He's alive just long enough to give a reel-to-reel film to Brock. And we find his badge, his ID, because that was in the crash wreck when they were searching. His burned up site OSI, Office of Secret Intelligence ID, which I think is the first time we see this. And like I said, this will be more prevalent when we get into the next episode. But then we find Race. He says, before he goes, I have the last word. I tell Johnny I love. And then we trail off, which is very weird. But again, another Johnny Quest reference. So there it is. And it won't be the last. All right. So we follow them back to the base. They watch the film. The film is produced by the government, but during the Vietnam era, something called Goliath serum, which is meant to turn like little small creatures into big bombs. Very careers in science-y thing, throwback to episode 2. But the film is in black and white. We have a younger looking Dr. Richard Impossible, who we will talk more about here in a minute. But we realize it's a problem, so we have to go find Dr. Venture and try and find Dr. Impossible, because as Brock breaks it to Dean, who finally starts panicking when he realizes this, that he basically realized this is way beyond their father's capability. And he finally starts taking it seriously. For a while there, he thinks it's a joke. So they're going to go look for Dr. Venture. Now, Dr. Venture this whole time has been at this base, this think tank, where where he finds out he's here working for Dr. Impossible. He and Pete White, there's reference to them being in school. The semester his father died, squeaks by with a D. Dr. Impossible apparently was a professor at the university. We will come back to that. We are not done with that. Constant backstory references being built in here. But they're like, White and Billy are super psyched there, and Doctor is not. Then they have to go do mandatory P tests, for which Dr. Impossible has brought some from, demands from them, and Dr. Venture has brought some from his boys, which he drops and loses. We then meet Sally, who appears to be, as if Dr. Richard Impossible isn't already a knockoff of the Fantastic Four's Dr. Reed Richards. Sally looks to be a knockoff of course, Sue Storm. Well, turns out that when she gets stressed, because later she starts flirting with Dr. Venture and offers him some of her pee to compensate, she gets drunk with him and then turns invisible. Not all of her, just her skin. Dr. Russell, I keep wanting to say Dr. Impossible here. Rusty freaks out, runs into a room, opens up a panel where a man laying down in one of these impossible suits that are supposed to be super stretchy and everything, just like the Fantastic Four outfits. He literally catches fire, runs around screaming, and a giant, callous-looking creature walks in, speaking in a halted voice. We come to find out these are basically your Johnny Storm and Thing knockoffs, and we get the backstory that apparently Sally was there when something went wrong, as apparently Richard Impossible was trying to harness cosmic rays / gamma rays, pulling a whole bunch of mixture of Marvel stuff in here. The experiment backfired. Of course, it benefited him. He's super stretchy now, while apparently Ned, who is taking the place of the Thing, is mentally handicapped. I will not use the word they use. They use the R word in a what now could be considered kind of faux pas, but I don't think they cared. This is 2004. And of course, apparently her brother Cody, not Johnny, can't touch oxygen without being lit on fire. Now they get there. Finally, this leads Dr. Impossible to take Rusty out and talk to him all in a plane where he can't hear him. Then basically drop him off to die in the snow. He hates his guts. Fortunately rescued by Brock, who've come looking for him in the Arctic, and kills a polar bear before he tries to embrace it, thinking it's Sally in a hallucination. And finally, they make it back to the base. They have to confront Dr. Impossible, who thinks the only way to stop Hank's further transformation of the Goliath serum stages is to kill him, which apparently stops the metabolic process. Doesn't do this. They actually, his Cody, Ned, the whole bunch of them tie him up very temporarily. They try to come up with a solution. The solution is they create ranch dressing. And ultimately, the effects just wear off without having, because Dr. Impossible says, we never tested it on humans. And so then Team Venture leaves, and you later in the end credits see Dr. Impossible looking at Dr. Venture's pee, discovering that Dr. Venture might be pregnant, but we know this is Sally, and she continues to break down because Venture leaves her. She's going to run away with him, and he chooses not to. Fun bit here. Like I said, he includes Rusty's pregnant. It's not Rusty, it's Sally, unfortunately. Fun thing here is the voice actor for Dr. Richard Impossible is Stephen Colbert. Won't always be Stephen Colbert. I believe later on it will be Bill Hader. But it's a fun little gag on, isolation / think tank researches and all that fun stuff. It's a very absurdist episode with a lot of little nods to other things and other cliches in the, shall we say, super spy genre. All right. So that's all for that episode. We're going to move on now to episode 8, Midlife Chrysalis. All right. Episode 8, Midlife Chrysalis. This one's written by Jackson Pollock and Doc Hammer. We are going to be reintroduced to the Monarch and Dr. Girlfriend in this story, but this one aired in September 25th, 2004. We have the X-1 pulled over by the military. Brock Sampson shows him his OSI ID, so we get a clear picture of this license to kill. He gets told that it's expired. And when they return to the base, he literally starts using the his charger, his car, as kind of like a comfort blanket because he's laying on it as the boys try to console him, because he now has to go take this exam in order to regain his super license, basically his license to kill, all that fun stuff. Well, at the same time, we find out that Dr. Venture is mainly pissed that the pilot called him Grandpa. And we also learned that I believe he's aged 43. And so they decide he wants to get back out in the game. That's his plan to regain his confidence. Well, Brock has sort of lost his confidence because he can't be a bodyguard. He's not allowed to, and not in the specific fate here. But at the same time, we find that was my doorbell. Someone's out there, if you hear that. But at the same time, Rusty wants to go out, and he wants Brock to be his wingman. So Brock takes him out. They go to a terrible strip club where they basically flirt with one girl, to which the Dr. Rusty thinks he's getting somewhere after he puts on this ridiculous wig. And he's wearing a suit that Dean says looks like the clown on my wall. It's horribly hideous. It's just bad. It's obviously that he hasn't gone out and flirted with anybody since the 1970s, it looks like, when he was himself a kid. He even talks about, I was Rusty, boy wonder. He's like living in the past, which is kind of his MO for this whole series throughout. He's constantly living in the shadow of his father. Later on, he'll be the shadow of other people who we'll get to by the end of the season and then moving into next season. If you're already watching ahead on, and you can watch the first 3 seasons on Netflix, so you do not have to watch along with us. I encourage you to, but you could also be watching ahead. Wonderful show. But he's really upset about this mocking age. So he's getting out, trying to get back there. Brock goes with him. Brock gets made fun of by the bartender. And at one point, he's biting his lip and bleeding as he tries to pull his knife out and then realizes he doesn't have a license to kill and has to put it back. He tries to save himself by basically approaching one of the strippers who left the stage and trying to, shall we say, get it on with her in the bathroom. And then he starts fantasizing about all the killing he likes to do. Very much like what we saw back in, I believe it was episode 5 with the love box or whatever it was, the joy can, and Dr. Orpheus, that little situation. Very similar type of issues with Brock's brain and the way he's hardwired. Well, when he finally leaves, deciding he can't do this anymore, and he can't protect anybody, apparently he's lost his mojo. Dr. Venture, Rusty, is immediately approached by a disguised Dr. Girlfriend, who looks like something out of a China Girl video with David Bowie. Again, David Bowie. And so he is approached by her. She is seducing him with the Monarch's help in an earpiece. And the Monarch is a little too into this, little voyeurism, little, I don't know what you want to call it. He also gets incredibly jealous later on, but she goes back to him with her place. He's watching this. It's very kind of like, not safe for kids, guys. Very adult moments here. But then while Dr. Venture, quote unquote, goes to get a condom, which is so old that it's cracking and falling in pieces like little crumbs, we find her injecting him with a serum. He thinks it's some sort of kinky foreplay. He passes out. We cut to the next morning where Brock came home, told Dean he couldn't squelch on the bell because Dean was left in charge. Hank gets put in charge, and it gets very Gunga Din, weird kind of like, that was funny in the 1970s and 80s, not so much now, kind of racist stuff. But very naughty, like boy crap nonsense. And they're going to help Brock study for his exam. And so we end up in a whole bit where Dean is assisting him with the written part. Hank is with the physical part, to which one point when he gets a little too aggressive with Brock, Brock says, when I get my license, I'm allowed to kill you. And then we have a nice montage. The written exam is the accessible sample questions are very like ridiculous. And at one point, Dr. Venture shows up with what he calls a love bite hickey from where the thing shot him. He goes back, and no one seems to care that he's taking 2 cups of coffee. But Charlene, as Dr. Venture, Dr. Girlfriend has been calling herself, has escaped. The Monarch gets mad at her because she has to go back and see him again. And when she does, he is absolutely hideous. This thing is growing on him. And of course, knocking my thing there. The Monarch is very upset about all this, but it's absolutely hilarious. And we have I absolutely love the montage where, and I couldn't find the song. I guess I need to go look in the credits. But there's a fun song they have playing while basically Brock is going off, destroying things, and at one point destroying Dean in a padded suit, unleashing his anger. He then goes to take his test while Dr. Venture has become a character out of a Kafka's Metamorphosis, and turned into a giant like beetle who's spinning a web cocoon of himself. Tries to get Helper to kill him. Makes the line about I played, dabbled in super science. I spit in God's eye and he spit back. All that fun stuff. And then Brock takes the test, for which he's a complete psychopath. But apparently he's being tested by the son of General Tracer, who spoke of him like a god. And so the son passes him. He gets in. It's like, and then Brock's like, oh yeah, I think I used to babysit you. Weird, kind of strangely incestuous organization we will find out more about. But then Dr. Girlfriend feels pity. So she shows up at one point, injects him with a serum that returns Dr. Venture to being normal before he turns and cocoons himself in this giant caterpillar thing where I guess he was going to turn into a butterfly. Sounds very much in the Monarch's wheelhouse. But then we are... then we find ourselves at the end of the story, Rusty finally emerging from the cocoon again, and everything has kind of returned to normal. Brock has got his license back. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of that episode, and it brings us to the end of episode 4 of our Go Team Venture rewatch. That was episode 8, Midlife Chrysalis. We will see us back here on Wednesday, where we will be looking at episode 9 and 10, and that is, Are You There, God? It's me, Dean. Okay, if you know the reference there, guys. And then Tag Sale, You're It. I love Tag Sale. It's probably one of my favorites. We'll get to those on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we'll be moving on to Past Tense and the Trial of the Monarch as we actually get very close to the end of Season 1. So, come back and see us for more. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow, like, comment. Love to hear from you guys. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Say not funny guys again.
Not funny guys again.
No, can you say not funny guys?